Today's R&B and throwbacks. I'm Glam Life Kim, and you are listening to 89.9 KMOJ. Right now, we are about to tune into Minneapolis 360 with the infamous Mr. Anthony Taylor. How are you today, bro?
I am feeling blessed, Kim. It is so good to be alive today. I'm
Isn't
I'm
it?
I'm I'm talking to you before the show. You always make me feel good. That
Oh,
the combination of the weather and then you played my jam before that, right? I mean, it
hey.
was I couldn't help but to be happy.
I know, right?
How you feeling?
I'm feeling great. It's beautiful outside. I woke up on the right side of the bed.
I heard that.
So I'm feeling awesome today, and I'm excited to hear what we're going to talk about on the show.
Yes, indeed. Minneapolis, thank you for tuning in today. This is Minneapolis 360. I am your host, Anthony Taylor, African American Community Specialist for the city of Minneapolis. As I have been saying to you since the inception of this show, it is truly an honor and a blessing to be able to have this platform to talk to you. As you all know, Minneapolis, we have been going weekly since the trial had started for Officer Derek Chauvin. We had our verdict last week, and we had a chance to talk to a couple of people during that time. So I am just truly blessed, and I'm hoping that folks got a lot of information in these 2 months that we were able to provide people. And that's just really what this whole purpose of this show is about. Hopefully, make you laugh. Hopefully, have some fun because I know I have a great time on this show.
Me
But
too.
yeah, and Kim, you are such an important part of this show. So
Oh,
I love riding shotgun with you on 360, sis.
oh, well, thank you. And same here. I appreciate the opportunity.
Today, Minneapolis, we are going to talk about COVID-19 vaccinations, right? We have continuously talked about COVID-19 for, well, it seems like forever because the world has been dealing with COVID. But as the world started to find out about vaccines and then the world started getting vaccines, and we have been specifically trying to update people and tell people on the ins and outs of the vaccine, B, where you can get it, and C, just give information to folks on how to make sure you do your research on the vaccine. So I'm bringing in a really good friend of mine to talk on the show about COVID-19, but and vaccinations. But before that, Minneapolis, I just want people to know some good news, right? I think that we all need some good news in our life, especially some of the time or things we've been dealing with around these times is the fact that the U.S. Census Bureau had released its findings, right? So we talked about the census, had a lot of conversation and folks chiming in on the census. One of the biggest things that we need to celebrate Minneapolis and Minnesota is that Minnesota led the nation in self-response rate at 75.1, right?
Wow.
That's right, Kim. That's a beautiful thing. Minneapolis and Minnesota did its job to make sure that we get counted. We all count, and it's the outreach from everybody, from the grassroots organizations to people to KMOJ to the city of Minneapolis, just making sure that folks are informed and getting people out there to get counted in the census. So, just some quick numbers, Minneapolis, in case you want to know. There's about 334 million people living in the U.S. So that's kind of just our overall numbers. And there's 5.7 people here in the state of Minnesota. So that's really, really one of the biggest things that I think is important is that we did not lose any representation in Congress. So all of our seats were been able to maintain those. And I think that's an important part to know. And it's really just a credit to Minneapolis to be able to get uh, us counted, and we did a great job. So that's a celebration to Minneapolis, and I'm so proud to have did my part to help in that along with a lot of different people. So beautiful thing, Minneapolis. You should be
Yes.
saluted. Uh, with that being said, right,
Mhm.
I want to bring on a really good friend of mine, right, from the Minneapolis Health Department, Heather Gillick. She has worked tirelessly this past year on COVID related issues and vaccines in general. And I just really want her to come on to just really talk about everything related to this. And she's one of the perfect people in the health department that can do this. Like really, Kim, you know how much I feel about April Graves from the health department, right?
Yeah.
Heather is one of those people that will give you some of the best information around COVID and vaccinations. So, Heather Gillick, welcome to Minneapolis 360, and how you doing today?
Welcome, Heather.
Hi, Anthony. Hi, Kim. Thank you so much for talking about my work as being tireless. I assure you I am tired.
I can believe it.
I am really feeling enthusiastic about the sunshine today. It's nice even when it's coming in the window from the work from home situation today. But I'm really excited to be here and talk about COVID with you all and to get some information out there. So I appreciate the warm welcome.
Absolutely, Heather. And just tell folks, what do you do for the health department?
Oh, yeah, great. I work for the Minneapolis Health Department as the Healthy Living Initiative Manager, so working on policy systems and environmental changes that can improve health as folks define it for themselves. So that bleeds over into the work around the COVID-19 pandemic, where I've been working on public information and outreach and trying to craft messages and work with folks to get information out there.
And we are talking with Heather Gillick from the health department. Okay, Heather, so let's talk to Minneapolis about where are we at in this vaccination process. This has been a lot of talk with vaccines and everything surrounding it. Where are we at in Minnesota?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's important to note that Minnesota as a state is still ahead of schedule on vaccinations. About 2.5 million Minnesotans, about 56% of the state's population has received at least one shot so far. And moreover, over 86% of Minnesota seniors, folks 65 plus, have gotten at least one shot. Just to think about comparing that to the national average from data from the CDC, around 141 million total of the U.S. population, 42.5% has received at least one shot. So that's kind of framing that inside of the fact that everyone in the U.S. 16 years of age or older is now eligible for COVID-19 vaccines. So a lot of work.
It is a lot of work, and I'm definitely glad that the governor had kind of loosened up some of those phases so folks can be able to get vaccines if they choose to. And I think that's really important. One of the things, Heather, that I want to kind of talk to you about and you can share with Minneapolis is the fact that I think before when we got on the show here, we talked about vaccinations, and we talked about it quite a bit. There was 2 vaccines, right? So everyone knew that Moderna had a vaccine and then Pfizer had a vaccine as well. And then there was some other talk, but not really out because it wasn't available, was the Johnson & Johnson vaccine that was coming out to the public. It came out to the public, but then, I think the elephant in the room, and I would love for you to kind of talk about that, there was some issues with the Johnson & Johnson, right? So just kind of talk about the news with all 3 of those and then really kind of dig a little bit deeper on the issue with the Johnson & Johnson vaccination.
Sure thing, Anthony. That's a really important conversation. Just kind of a reminder, a refresher to folks, the Moderna and the Pfizer vaccines are those 2-shot mRNA vaccines. And then we have the Johnson & Johnson shot that's kind of got the advantage of the one and done. It's a single application shot. But it was paused temporarily after some reports of a small number of people getting a rare but very severe type of blood clot after being vaccinated with Johnson & Johnson. And that pause really occurred because health officials and doctors wanted to really take a deeper dive and look out for whether that was going to be a more prevalent part of the application of that vaccine, and really confirm if that was something to be very concerned about. And just for reference, it did happen to 6 women, all under the age of 50, who were vaccinated with Johnson & Johnson. But also for context, that 7 million people have received doses in the U.S. of the Johnson & Johnson vaccine. So those blood clots that are rare and severe have happened just to 6 women, all under the age of 50. So it certainly is still a very big deal, but it is also a very small number of folks, 6 to 7 million. So on Friday, officials from the CDC and the FDA lifted the pause on the Johnson & Johnson vaccine after determining the risks are very, very small for having those blood clots as a part of it. So we are back on track with administering that Johnson & Johnson vaccine, and it is available in the state of Minnesota now.
We are with Heather Gillick from the Minneapolis Health Department. And Heather, I just want to ask you this follow-up quickly, right? I'm glad you kind of let us know about the Johnson & Johnson vaccine and some of the issues. And I'll ask you about blood clots after I ask you this question. But so now that we know that the pause is off of the Johnson & Johnson vaccines, there are 3 vaccines available to the public. Can a person choose which vaccine they would like to take?
That's a complicated question, Anthony, because the answer is a bit yes and no. The advice from public health is to take whichever vaccine that you are offered, but there is an ability to think about which one you may want to take. Many clinics, as they're doing their registration process, will let you know which vaccine you're likely to receive at those different spaces. And so you can sign up for a vaccine clinic based on which vaccine is available there.
Yeah, and I appreciate you answering that question, Heather. One of the things that I hear a lot is that, folks want to choose which vaccine they want. Obviously, I think people who have done the homework that they feel is necessary for them to get the right information may want to choose the Pfizer instead of the Moderna, right? Or some people like, man, I'm not even messing with this Johnson & Johnson, because ultimately I think when there's pauses in some of these things, it just makes people feel some type of way. So I think that's just a valid question that I hear from folks. And even in my instance, if I was not vaccinated, I would want to ask or know if I could possibly just choose which one I want.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's important, when you've done your research and you know kind of what you're going after. It never hurts to ask, right? Never hurts to ask questions, never hurts to ask if you can have access to a different vaccine, if that's what you choose. And, I will say for a lot of folks, the Johnson & Johnson vaccine is pretty appealing if they have things that are scheduled or they're operating on a timeline, and that one and done kind of shot can be a real benefit in that space.
We are talking with Heather Gillick, Minneapolis Health Department, talking about COVID-19 vaccinations. And with these blood clots, Heather, was there any of these issues found with the Moderna or the Pfizer vaccine?
No major safety issues have come up with either Pfizer or Moderna, which have been given to more than 180 million people. So not the same thing. Those side effects are prevalent for all of the vaccinations. Folks can expect to potentially experience things like some fatigue, arm soreness, maybe even fevers and chills. But the Johnson & Johnson vaccine in the U.S. is the only one where there's been instances of the blood clotting.
I mean, and that's good to know. And one of the things that I think is important is the fact that we are now starting to open up a lot of different vaccination places to go. And now Minneapolis, there's a vaccination site at the state fairgrounds. Heather, kind of just talk to us about that. How is that going? What do you know about that? Give folks some information on the vaccinations at the state grounds.
Yeah, it's a big site, a big operation there that's happening. The state of Minnesota is running a community vaccine clinic there with federal support. As of this morning, there's over 12,000 first-dose Pfizer appointments that are available through that site that are being offered until the end of Tuesday, May 4th. There's no cost. Minnesotans don't need to prove their residency or don't need to prove provide an ID or any kind of medical insurance to be vaccinated at this space or other spaces. And appointments and walk-ins are now being accepted at their fairgrounds. There's a registration site at mn.gov that you can find there and select state fairgrounds, or there's a phone number that you can call for the Minnesota Department of Health for the public hotline, and that's at 1-833-431-2053.
So Minneapolis, that number is 1-833-431-2053. And as you all know, Minneapolis 362, each and every time before I get on the show, I try to give some information to folks about a lot of different things. And we've talked about this vaccine connector, and I've gave that website out to folks. And I wanted people to know that you can look and get on there to find information on where you can get the vaccine, sign up. But Heather, just kind of tell people a little bit more, because you're really the professional on this. Like, tell people a little bit more about the use of the vaccine connector.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's hard to be a professional internet user for this vaccine information. There's a ton of it out there, but I can share, spaces if you're wanting to connect with the vaccine connector, vaccineconnector.mn.gov. There is an online form, and you can fill out that form whether you want to get the vaccine tomorrow or you want to get the vaccine in a few weeks. You can sign up there and you'll be notified when there's spots available. So it can be a great way, if you're really comfortable with the internet or with the computer, to start getting notifications when there are vaccine shots available that might fit into your schedule if you're seeking one. That vaccine connector website is now in multiple languages, including Spanish, and so that makes it a little bit easier to navigate if English isn't your first language there as well. And I will say, in addition to what's being offered by the state, either the state fairgrounds site or other sites that are being operated by the state, in addition to that, the city of Minneapolis has their own COVID vaccination site as well, that can have those individual opportunities that are separate from that. Might be a little bit of a smaller location, might be a location where it would be a little bit closer to your particular neighborhood or something like that. And so you are able to go into that space and find another location. Some of those spaces are at the Minneapolis Public Schools Davis Center, at the Park Avenue United Methodist Church. And sometimes we also have things that are posted there that are smaller individual clinics that may be at community centers. We'll also have information there for other clinics where vaccinations might be available. And so it can be a nice way. The Vaccine Connector is one way to get notifications. There's also checking the minneapolismn.gov/coronavirus/vaccines website.
And Heather, I want to thank you for being on this show, because I think is vitally important to talk about this, to have people make informed decisions. One of the things that I want to ask you this question is that I first met you in March around the work with COVID, and a lot of different things with the outreach that was going on with COVID, getting folks PPEs, getting organizations list of supplies of what they need, to COVID testing sites, to giving, and you and your department and the people that work for you have done an extremely beautiful job in doing presentations to different community organizations, different neighborhood organizations, and just really the entire outreach and education that you have helped lead, a proponent of this work around COVID. I just want to ask you this question, because I think it's important, and you've done so much work and you continue to do so much work. Just tell folks, just how have you felt throughout this whole process? Maybe some of the rewarding things that you found in your work, some of the things that really took interest in your heart, or some observations around COVID and vaccinations in this whole basically year that you've been working. Just kind of share with Minneapolis a little bit of your experience regarding this work for this year-plus long process.
Oh, Anthony, that is a big question. But it's definitely been a bit of a roller coaster. The needs for information and the way of connecting about information in this new kind of virtual and distanced and digital space has been pretty intense. I've been really grateful and really lucky to have great colleagues and great folks from the community who have been really interested over this last year plus of helping to identify areas where there are issues, or identify areas where there are assets that we can really share and amplify and talk about. So I think we've had a lot of really important conversations about how COVID and the mitigation efforts, the way that we're trying to make it easier and then ultimately make it, not as big of a part of our lives, have really impacted a lot of folks in different ways, from our feelings of isolation to the public health impacts to like kind of other impacts on social determinants, housing and economic stability. So we've had a lot of really broad conversations that extend beyond just, kind of getting vaccinated and the kind of shared experience that we've all really had in trying to get through and around and within this pandemic experience. And so I appreciate you kind of bringing up there that it's really taken a lot of effort and energy from everyone to do this work together. And we've had a lot of conversations with different community groups and organizations to really try to identify what are some of the specific needs for individuals that, sometimes we're not able to see when we're thinking about things at a whole city level or even at a whole state level. So the experience, I think, has been, really exhausting, but also really eye-opening and disheartening at times, but also inspiring in other ways.
And I'm glad you answered the question, Heather, and thank you. And that's a great answer. I mean, I like to personalize the show quite a bit. I mean, I think a lot of times, a lot of folks do a lot of work behind the scenes that folks don't necessarily know. And we all know how COVID impacted our entire community. But being able to kind of just personalize folks' story in this work, I wanted you to share, because ultimately, each day that everybody throughout this whole entire city and community has done a lot with COVID-19 and vaccinations and those things. So I just really want to have folks sometimes share their story. One of the things about the health department too, Minneapolis, that I enjoy is the fact that my relationship that I have with people, and April Grace has been on several times, and she had shared her story in her own personal story about her vaccination story. And I think it's really to make sure that folks can kind of understand and personalize some of the things that we do for each other in the health community. So again, Heather, I want to thank you. You probably wasn't expecting that question, but Glenn made me tell people to expect the unexpected, so right. I'm going to do that.
I expect that from you for sure, Anthony.
So blame it on Glenn, because he told me to do that. So as we sit here with Heather Gillick on the Minneapolis Health Department here on Minneapolis 360, give folks some information about COVID-19 testing that's going on in the city and how folks can access information, Heather.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's really important that as we're moving through this, whether we're vaccinated or we're not, we're still dealing with this pandemic as a community. And so we really still need to keep protecting each other. And so testing can be a big part of that, kind of in addition to continuing to wear masks if, you're over the age of 2 and able to medically tolerate one in public spaces. And so that's kind of an important component of this. But also, we're continuing to have testing available, because getting tested is more and more important as we kind of start returning into more public spaces and into closer proximity to other folks. There are a lot of free testing sites that are available all over Minneapolis, and we're really encouraging folks to get tested, particularly students who are returning to school, folks who are engaged in youth sports or other kind of sports that we're moving to doing more of outside, college students, trade school students who are returning to classes, and really anyone who's interacting with people outside of, your family unit or your household. And most of that is because even if you're not experiencing symptoms, you can pass the virus on to others. So if you're in an environment where you're routinely engaging with other people, it's important to get tested, even if you're not showing symptoms, with some regularity, so that you can know if you are putting other people at risk. So the state of Minnesota has standard COVID-19 testing sites that are open at the Minneapolis Convention Center from 9 a.m. to 7 p.m. on weekdays and 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. on weekends. There's also the international airports at Terminal 1 that are there every day from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. And appointments are encouraged, but walk-ins are totally accepted. There are also some free COVID-19 saliva testing events offered by the city of Minneapolis at Sanctuary Covenant Church from noon to 3 on Fridays. And so there's, one coming up this Friday, April 30th. There are also a lot of community clinics that are doing testing, making that testing available as well. At the Native American Community Clinic and Southside Community Health Services are two examples of that space. So, there's kind of that continued pressure for us to maintain learning more about our own exposure and keeping other people safe with masking and distancing and getting tested when we think we might be exposed.
We are speaking with Heather Gillick, Minneapolis Health Department, around COVID-19 vaccinations. She gave us a lot of insight and information on the three vaccines that are out there. If folks need to find out vaccination clinics or can get vaccinated, there's a vaccinator connector, a vaccine connector that folks can connect to on the website and be able to navigate that. Heather, as we wrap up the show, and I know that one of the things, at least I'll speak personally myself, is the fact that there is, and I can and at times have expressed like COVID fatigue, right? And COVID fatigue is real. And one of the things that I sense and that I feel about myself is that the weather is starting to get nice. A lot of us, all of us, I'll say this, missed our spring and our summer. Now we are turn the calendar 1 year from then to now. And as the weather starts to get nice, people are outside more. People want to get out of the house a lot more. Just explain to folks here quickly just how important it is to still be able to do what is necessary to protect ourselves with masks and social distances. So just kind of remind folks that that's still important.
Yeah, Anthony, it's true. I mean, in some of these ways, grabbing a mask has become, a standard part. Going out of the house, grab my phone, grab my keys, grab my mask. But also, I have to put Post-it notes in certain places to remind myself of things like that. So that kind of fatigue of remembering to protect ourselves, remembering to protect others is certainly very present, kind of continuing as we move forward here. And it remains an important part of this until we're on the other side of this and we can ensure that those who are most vulnerable in our community are continuing to be protected by our behaviors and the availability of vaccines. So kind of just thematically with the show, the getting vaccinated is still kind of the best way to work to protect ourselves and each other. But those masking processes, as well as kind of washing our hands, staying socially distanced, and really kind of continuing to just think about our behaviors when we're out in public spaces and who we're interacting with, and think about how that may affect us, may affect our loved ones, and may affect folks that we don't even know who may ultimately be impacted by our behavior. But we are able to go outside. There have been some adjustments to some of the restrictions on social gatherings, on being in public spaces. We expect those to continue to be changed as things change and as the summer approaches and it gets a little warmer out here. It can't be Minnesota winter forever.
It cannot be Minnesota winter forever. Thank God. And I want to thank you for coming on, Heather. It was truly a pleasure, and I look forward to having you come back on the show to maybe even talk about some of the updates and where we at with our COVID numbers here locally and statewide. So, Heather, appreciate you being on Minneapolis 360 today.
All right. Thanks so much, Anthony. Have a great day.
All right. Thanks, Heather.
Kim, it's still a personal choice, right, with taking the vaccine. So I just encourage people to do your homework.
Yes.
And do what's best for you, right?
Yep, absolutely. Please do.
Do what you think is best.
Mm-hmm.
And as the show wraps up, we're out of time. I would love to talk more about a lot of different things, but we are out of time, Minneapolis. Just to inform folks, the listeners that listen to the show, we will go back to our bi-weekly time of twice a week, the first and fourth Wednesday of the month. So it has been my pleasure, and it's truly always nice to get on the radio. So Minneapolis, stay safe and be well.
Thanks so much, Anthony. I just want to remind you guys, too, that there are over 10,000 open Pfizer appointments over the next week at the Minnesota State Fair community vaccination site. You can sign up right now. MDH's COVID hotline is 833-431-2020. 833-431-2053. Again, that's 833-431-2053. It's available to schedule appointments now for this site. The line is available in multiple languages and can assist with language, including ASA and ADA accommodations. Every registrant will get a free Metro Transit pass in their confirmation materials. So if you need a transportation, that's an option. The vaccine is free to everyone. Insurance is not required. Government ID is not required at any time for this site, not during registration or when you're at the site for your appointment. And the site is now open and going 7 days a week with appointments filling up fast. So there's no excuses, you guys. If you want it and you're like, I don't know how I'm going to get there, or I don't have insurance, or I don't have an ID, you don't have to worry about none of that. Just go ahead and make that appointment. 833-431-2053. Now, we have one other. You can also call to schedule an appointment at the Phyllis Wheatley Community Center in collaboration with Black Nurses Rock, and they are providing vaccination events for community members that are 18 years and older, and they will take place in the Bethune School Gymnasium in North Minneapolis. Now, they are doing the Moderna vaccine, and it requires 2 doses, 28 days apart. They're doing that 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. Saturday, May 1st. Again, that's Phyllis Wheatley Community Center, 1301 North 10th Avenue in Minneapolis. And you can call 612-254-1145. Again, that's 612-254-1145. I'm sure this is more than likely on our website, and you can also call up to KMOJ if you weren't able to get those numbers and if you need a little bit more information. I'm Glam Life Kim. On the way next, Zany K.